Back with another What's New in AI. So, for today, we're going to be talking about why the gaming industry can't afford to look this good. So, video games can't afford to look this good, and I'm actually excited to read this. This was sent to me by a friend, so I promised I'd take a look at it. So, now I'm going to look at it. So, video games cannot afford to look this good. So, this person, Zachary Small, wrote this. This is like just a few days old. The gaming industry spent billions pursuing the idea that customers wanted realistic graphics. Did executives misread the market? Probably because in my opinion, I remember like playing the first early video games. Nobody actually cared about the graphics. We all cared about actually playing the game, especially the person versus person or player versus player games. Those are the best in my opinion. So one way to understand the video game industry is current crisis is by looking closely at Spider-Man spandex. For decades, companies like Sony and Microsoft, shout out to Sony, these are Sony headphones, have bet that realistic graphics were the key to attracting bigger audiences. By investing in technology, they have elevated flat, pixelated worlds into experiences that often feel like stepping into a movie. Designers of last year's Marvel's Spider-Man 2 used the processing power of the PlayStation 5, so Peter Parker's outfits would be rendered with realistic textures and skyscraper windows could reflect rays of sunlight. That level of detail did not come cheap. Insomniac Games, which is owned by Sony, spent about $300 million to develop. I said $300. What? To develop Spider-Man 2, according to leaked documents. That's wild. More than triple the budget of the first game in the series, which was released 5 years earlier. Chasing Hollywood realism requires Hollywood budgets, and even though Spider-Man 2 sold more than 11 million copies, several members of Insomniac lost their jobs when Sony announced 900 layoffs in February. Yes, because I actually talked about this with a few of my friends today, and the layoffs are coming for all middle managers, people who don't want to do the work, people who are given these big budgets, and they are just not realizing that AI is coming, and there's no reason to have these huge budgets and these Hollywood production style budgets when it can be done for less than the actual cost now, and that's coming. So cinematic games are getting so expensive and time consuming to make that the video game industry has started to acknowledge that investing in graphics is providing diminished financial returns, right? Because people want games fast. Nobody wants to wait 5 to 6 years for Grand Theft Auto 6 to come out. That's just the way it is. And they're saying, and now Grand Theft Auto is saying that it could be coming out, it should come out in 2025, but they don't even know. It's not worth it. It's very clear that high fidelity visuals are only moving the needle for a vocal class of gamers in their 40s and 50s, said Jacob Navick, a former executive at Square Enix who left that studio, known for the Final Fantasy series in 2016 to start his own media company. But what does my 7-year-old son play? Minecraft, Roblox, Fortnite. That's facts. Those are the games that, and the graphics are just regular. Jules Van Drunen, a market analyst and professor at New York University, said it was clear what younger generations value in the video games. Playing is an excuse for hanging out with other people. Exactly. And if you take a look at Minecraft 2024, Minecraft 2024 does not look like the Harry Potter, for example, which has like really good graphics, but Minecraft is super popular. It's all about how many people are playing the same game as you. Roblox is a picture of Roblox 2006, right? Like these are all like pixelated, boxy characters. Roblox, instead of prioritizing realistic graphics, games like Minecraft and Roblox provide a flexible sandbox environment and robust social infrastructure. Their success is highly dependent on user generated content. That's right. User generated content is the key. When millions are happy to play old games with outdated graphics, including Roblox, Minecraft, and Fortnite, it creates challenges for studios that make blockbuster single player titles. The industry's audience has slightly shrunk for the first time in decades. Studios are rapidly closing and sweeping layoffs have affected more than 20,000 employees in the past 2 years, including more than 2,500 Microsoft workers. Many video game developers built their careers during an era that glorified graphical fidelity. They marveled at a scene from The Last of Us Part 2 in which Ellie, the protagonist, removes a shirt over her head to reveal bruises and scrapes on her back without any technical glitches. But a few years later, costly graphical upgrades are often barely noticeable. When the studio Naughty Dog released a remastered version of The Last of Us Part 2 this year, light bounced off lakes and puddles for more realistic shimmer. In a November ad for the PlayStation 5 Pro, an enhanced version of the Sony console that retails for almost $700. People don't want to pay this to play a game. It's like you gotta wait all year for Christmas to get a game like that. For real, for the average family, like they're gonna like probably put that off because they're gonna think they need to like make a car payment, make rent or mortgage. Like these things are For the extra graphics, the price point is just not right for the average retail consumer. The billboards in Spider-Man Suit Manhattan featured crisper letters, optimizing cinematic games for a narrow group of consumers. Oops, let me just fix my shirt. Okay, all right, because like I said, okay, optimizing cinematic games for a narrow group of consumers who have spent hundreds of dollars on a console or computer may no longer make financial sense. Studios are increasingly prioritizing games with basic graphics that can be played on the smartphones already in everyone's pockets. They essentially run on toasters, said Matthew Ball, an entrepreneur and video game analyst, talk about games like Roblox and League of Legends. The developers are not chasing graphics, but the social connection that players have built over time. That's what it's all about. Going Hollywood. Developers had long thought players to equate realism with excellence, but this new toaster generation of gamers is upsetting industry orthodoxies. The developer behind Animal Well, which received extensive praise this year, said the game's file size was smaller than many of the screenshots used to promote it. A company like Nintendo was once the exception that proved the rule, telling its audiences over the past 40 years that graphics were not a priority. That strategy had shown weaknesses through the 1990s and 2000s when the Nintendo 64 and GameCube had weaker visuals and sold fewer copies than Sony consoles. But now the tables have turned. Industry figures joke about how a cartoony game like Luigi's Mansion 3 on a Nintendo Switch considerably outsells gorgeous cinematic narratives on the PlayStation 5 like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There are a number of theories why gamers have turned their backs on realism. One hypothesis is that players got tired of seeing the same artistic style in releases. Well, wow. Others speculate that cinematic graphics require so much time and money to develop that gameplay suffers, leaving customers with a hollow experience. Another theory is that major studios have spent recent years reshaping themselves in Hollywood's image, pursuing crossover deals that have given audiences a Super Mario Bros. Movie and The Last of Us on HBO. Not only have companies like Ubisoft opened divisions to produce films, but their games include an astonishing amount of scenes where players watch the story unfold. In 2007, the first Assassin's Creed provided more than 2.5 hours of footage for a fan edit of the game's narrative. As the series progressed, so did Ubisoft's taste for cinema. Like many studios, it increasingly leaned on motion capture animators who could create scenes using human actors on sound stages. A fan edit of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which was released in 2020, lasted about 23 hours longer than 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. Gamers and journalists began talking about how the franchise's entries had gotten too bloated and expensive. Ubisoft's developers advertised last year's Assassin's Creed Mirage, which had about 5 hours of cutscenes, as more intimate. Okay, this is getting to a lot of gaming stuff, but we get the big picture, which is like the games doesn't have to be so high quality. It could just be fun to play. The immersive graphics of virtual reality can also be prohibitive for gamers. The Meta Quest Pro sells for $1,000 and the Apple Vision Pro sells for $3,500. I have friends who had the Apple Vision Pro. They didn't regret the purchase, but it's like $3,500. It's a lot for the average person. This year, the chief executive of Ubisoft, Yves Guillemot, told the company's investors that because the virtual reality version of Assassin's Creed did not meet sales expectations, the company was not increasing its investment in the technology. Okay, live service games that are playable on mobile devices like Genshin Impact can generate large amounts of revenue. Yeah, Genshin Impact, I heard it's a super fun game. Many studios have instead turned to the live service model where graphics are less important than a regular drip of new content that keeps players engaged. Genshin Impact by the studio Hoyoverse makes roughly $2 billion every year on mobile platforms alone, according to data tracker SensorFlow. Going broke? It was clear this year, however, the live service strategy carries its own risk. Warner Bros. Discovery took a $200 million loss on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, according to Bloomberg. Wow. Sony closed the studio behind Concord, its attempt to compete with team based shooters like Overwatch and Apex Legends, 1 month after the game released to a minuscule player base. That was a good call by them to just shut it down. But $200 million loss? Wow. We have a market that has been in growth mode for decades, Ball said. Now we are in a mature market where instead of making bets on growth, companies need to try and steal shares from each other. Some industry professionals believe there is a path for superb looking games to survive the cost crunch. I used to be a high fidelity guy. I would log into games, and if it didn't look hyper realistic, then it was not so interesting, said David Reitman, a managing director at PricewaterhouseCoopers, where he leads the consulting firm's game division. Okay, so that's why he's playing games at a consulting firm. There was a race to hyper realism, and it's tough to pivot away. You have set expectations. Reitman sees a future where most of the heavy costs associated with cutting edge graphics are handled by artificial intelligence. He said that manufacturers were working on creating AI chips for consoles that would facilitate those changes, and that some game studios who were already using smart algorithms to improve graphics further than anything previously seen. He expects that sport games will be the first genre to see considerable improvements because developers have access to hundreds of hours of game footage. They can take feeds from leagues and transpose them into graphical renderings, Reitman said, leveraging language models to generate the incremental movements and facial expressions of players. Some independent developers are less convinced. The idea that there will be content from AI before we figure out how it works and where it will source data from is really hard, said Remy Ishmael, a game developer in the Netherlands. Ishmael is worried that major studios are in a tight spot where traditional games have become too expensive, but live service games have become too risky. He pointed to recent games that had both jaw dropping realism, Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, individual pebbles of gravel cast shadows. Wow, so the pebbles have shadows on them. And Sensua's Saga Hellblade 2, Rays of Sunlight flicker through the trees. Wow, you can really get lost in games like that because of how realistic it is, and lackluster sales. He recalled the question that emerged early in the coronavirus pandemic and has become something of an unofficial model in the video game industry. How can we as an industry make shorter games with worse graphics made of people who are paid well to work less? Ishmael said. If we can, then there might be short term hope, he continued. Otherwise, I think the slow strangulation of the games industry is ongoing. Maybe that's not the question we should be asking, right? Because the entire article is based on how increasing expenditure on graphics does not increase the bottom line. In fact, having a game that has a huge player base, as we know, which is what games are made successful of, is a huge player base, people that are constantly playing with each other, that have a fan base that interacts. That's what makes games successful. I mean, I have games like I played Harry Potter, the new Hogwarts game, and then but I still find myself playing my Switch with the Super Smash Bros. And the main reason is that I'm playing against people. With the Harry Potter game, I'm just playing with myself. It's like it's fun to like fly on the broom and like fight these like monsters and stuff, but it's just single player. So unless I'm doing it with somebody or unless I have an audience, those kind of games are gonna have to compete with the games that you can actually play with your friends because so that's what going online is for playing with friends for competition. So if you like what you see today, like stay tuned because I'm gonna be making more AI videos. My goal is to do an AI video a day because I'm really interested in keeping up with the latest and greatest, and there's so many new things every single day. So join me on this journey to do more AI videos. Thank you for watching, and my name is Barren O, and nice to meet you all. Bye.